my name is Sarah and today we are celebrating 1,000 subscribers. A couple of weeks ago I made an announcement video that sometime over my 6-ish week break from BookTube I hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you again so very much for all of you that have subscribed to my channel at any point over the last little less than 2 years. So in that announcement video, I said that we were going to do a Q&A to celebrate along with a giveaway. So today is the day for the Q&A and the giveaway. We're going to start with the questions. I will do my very best to answer all of the questions that you guys asked. If for whatever reason your question did not get answered in the video, I will make sure to go back to the original video and answer your question in the comments. So I'm going to try to get them all in, but I want to keep this to a relatively reasonable length as well. And then at the end of everything, we will do the giveaway. So let's get started. The first question comes from The Book Warrior, which is, what is your favorite Harry Potter book? If you've heard me talk about the Harry Potter series at all, then you know that it is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the 7th and final book in the series. I love the way that everything comes together. Some of my favorite moments in the entire series are in this book, and as a writer, I love the complexity of the story and how this is just such a fantastic finale to everything, all of those different threads that J.K. Rowling started weaving together from the very beginning, and it's just, I love it. My heart is sad at points, but also incredibly happy every time I finish this book because it's just wonderful. The next question comes from Remembered Reads, who asked, is there a story to the figurine on the shelf behind you? They are, of course, referring to this figurine of the woman holding a bouquet of roses, and the answer is no, there is not a particular story necessarily. Many of you guys know, I'm in a transition between living in my own place and heading down to Florida for a few months where I will be staying with my sister and brother-in-law. So right now, I'm chilling in my parents' basement, and this just happened to be a place where my mom said I could put some of my books so that they were not all in storage, and because it's her house and her bookshelves, the figurine was there. So I guess you could say the story is that my life is in transition, but other than that, no story behind it. The next question comes from Hannah Eyre, which is, have you read An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir? And the answer to that question is no, not yet. It is on my rather lengthy TBR, keep on the radar type list, but if you've been around this channel for a while, you know that YA and YA fantasy are not very high up on my favorite genre and audience lists. In fact, if I was looking at the audiences like adult, young adult, and then children middle grade, YA tends to be my least favorite of the audiences, just for whatever reason. I'm not totally sure what it is about the books, but I very much lean toward adult books, and then I have more favorite children's middle grade books than I do YA books. So all that to say, I have not read the book yet. I will maybe hopefully get to it sometime in the near-ish future, but I'm really furiously trying to read through all of the books that I own that are unread on my shelf right now, so it might not be until next year or later. We'll see if I get to it at some point. I'll try. The next question comes from Lottie842, who asks, is there a book you have absolutely loved but been disappointed that it wasn't more popular because nobody else has read it? And did you figure out why it's not popular because it is totally awesome and should just be one of those books that everybody loves? I have two answers for this particular question. The first one is Peace Like a River by Leif Enger, which was my favorite book of 2015, and I know no one else that has read it. I heard about it from a blogger, and other than her, who I've never actually met in person, not a single soul that I know has read the book, and it's amazing and wonderful, and I love it. And I think part of the reason that no one else pretty much I know has read it is because it is an adult literary fiction novel. And it's not to say that BookTube people don't read adult literary fiction, because there are some that do, but it is not nearly as common as many of the other genres. And of my friends that do read, most of them don't read literary fiction either. And so even though it is an incredible story that I loved when I read it in 2015, that I loved when I reread it at the beginning of this year, no one else has read it, and it makes my hair a little sad. The second answer to this question is technically a series, and that is the Great Library Trilogy by Rachel Caine. The first one is Ink and Bone, the second is Paper and Fire, and the third book is Ash and Quill, which actually just came out last week on July 11th. It is a YA steampunkish alternate history dystopian kind of trilogy where the Great Library of Alexandria was never destroyed and has turned into a dictatorial superpower that controls all access to knowledge, and it is baller. I love it. It's fantastic. The world building, the characters, it's great and wonderful, but pretty much the only person I know that has read it is Kirsty from Melbourne on My Mind, who is the person that recommended it to me, and I have not figured out why more people aren't gushing over this series, because it seems totally up the BookTube world in general's alley, and it's just me and Kirsty who, are sitting here with our feelings, and yeah, it makes me a little bit sad. So everyone go read that series because it's amazing. The next question comes from Isabeau's Literary Musings, and that is, what changes do you think have happened to BookTube since you started, and do you plan on doing anything new with your channel now that you've come back to BookTube? I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a major change, but I think a shift in focus that has happened, at least that I've noticed in the last year or so, is that there has been a much bigger focus on diversity in literature. And again, I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a new thing, particularly for certain booktubers, but I think the community as a whole has started to focus on it a little bit more, which makes me very excited, because as I look back on a lot of the books that I read before my booktube days, I did not read very diversely. Part of that is because of the genres that I tend to pick up. I don't tend to be as diverse as some other genres, but I'm really excited and I love seeing that shift in focus within the community. As far as myself, personally, I don't really have any major changes on the horizon. I do have a new discussion type series that I'm going to be starting within the next couple of weeks, but I've done bookish discussions since I started my channel, so there will still be, you know, top 5 Wednesdays and monthly recs and things like that, along with wrap-ups and reviews and just sort of whatever I feel like doing. So no major changes on the horizon, just getting back to making regular content. The next question comes from Chekali, which I'm totally sorry if I butchered that, but the question is, what kind of books do you like best? My favorite genres are typically literary fiction, historical fiction, and mystery thrillers, but as far as books, regardless of audience, genre, etc., I love well-written books that are character-driven, that have really great philosophical questions and themes running through them. It does not matter the genre, the audience, etc. If you give me those 3 things, really high quality writing, really fantastic, well-developed, amazing characters, and just really interesting philosophical questions and themes for me as a reader to ponder, I will probably love your book. All About Books asked, what other things aside from BookTube and reading do you like to do in your spare time? This list is long and varied because I do a crap ton of different things, but one grouping of things that I love to do is like performance art. I started playing piano when I was 6 years old. I have also been singing and dancing and acting since I was 5, 6-ish, and I continue to do that both at my church, sometimes with community theater, or I'll just play piano and sing in my house as a de-stressor. But I really, really love doing that stuff, particularly when life gets a little bit crazy, because it's just fun to just sit and relax and play a song on the piano or go sing or do a community theater show or something like that. On a similar vein, Ashley Jolly asked, do you have any random weird or neat hobbies or something you like to do in your free time other than read? So this isn't technically a current hobby, but something I used to do that I loved, that I totally miss, that is not super common, is stage combat. I was a theater minor in college and I took armed and unarmed stage combat my senior year. So when I graduated, I was certified by the Society of American Fight Directors in single sword, knife, and unarmed stage fighting, and it was so much fun and I miss it a lot. And every time I watch an action movie or a theatrical show where there's fighting on stage, I'm just like, oh, I miss it. I still have my Nerf sword that I used to practice outside of class, and it's just, yeah. So that's my weird, unique-ish past hobby, I guess. The next few questions come from Madeline May. She asked a few, and the first one is, if you could pick any author to write your life story, who would you choose? And I think I would have to go currently with Catherynne M. Valente, the author of the Fairyland series, because her writing style is to die for. The Fairyland series is gorgeous. The phrases and the lyricalness of it is all just amazing, and if she could make my life story as beautiful as the Fairyland series is, I would be all over that. Madeline's next question was, how have your reading preferences changed over the years? And I would say that the biggest way my reading preferences has changed is that I am much more particular about the books that I enjoy now. When I was a kid, I didn't really have a big awareness of what was quality writing. I just knew that I enjoyed stories or that I liked particular characters. But as I've gotten older, since I got my degree in English, since I've read a lot more, I'm much more aware of quality writing versus not so great writing, of well-developed characters versus not well-developed characters, those kinds of things. And so, yeah, I'm just much more particular about the books that I really enjoy. Not that I will not read a book if it's not, you know, of 5-star quality, but I'm much more choosy about the books that I gush about and love than I used to be when I was a kid. Her final question is, do you have a favorite type of bookish merch? And if so, do you have a favorite place to buy it from? I'm not really big on the bookish merch thing, mostly because I'm not big on stuff in general, but back in January for my birthday, my parents got me this Pride and Prejudice scarf. It has a passage from Pride and Prejudice on it from a shop called Story Arts, and their scarves are beautiful. I have 2 more already that I want, and I think I'm gonna have to like limit myself to just those 2 more because otherwise I would buy all the scarves because I love scarves. So yeah, Story Arts, it's a fantastic shop. I'll put the link in the description below. I have the Pride and Prejudice scarf, and I also want the Anne of Green Gables one, and then the E.E. Cummings I Carry You in My Heart one. The next question comes from Megan Ryan, who asks, how do you manage to find time to read even when you're super busy? I think the 2 big things that help me read consistently when I'm busy are 1, keeping a book with me at all times. I always have one in my bag so that if I'm on public transportation, if I happen to be waiting for someone to show up, they're arriving later to a thing than we thought they were, or whatever, I can always just sit down and read, even if it's just a few pages of a book. And the other thing is that I read to wind down before I go to sleep. There are multiple parts of my like sort of evening routine that I like to do in succession when I have my ideal night, but the 2 sort of non-negotiables are that I journal for at least a few minutes and I try to read at least 1 chapter of a book, nonfiction or fiction, every single night before I go to sleep, which sometimes it doesn't mean that there's lots of reading going on, but it means there's always some reading going on. Next question comes from Getting Higgy With It, and that is, what's your favorite book that brought you to tears? And I cry a lot when I read books, so I don't know if I could narrow it down, but I think the 2 that come to mind first are The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, which is a beautiful, very much tear-inducing World War II fiction novel that takes place in Nazi Germany, and then my favorite book of last year, which was The Nightingale by Christian Hannah, which is also a World War II fiction that takes place in Nazi-occupied France. Both of them made me sob a lot. Both of them are absolutely beautifully written, amazing characters, amazing themes, all the amazing things. Just be prepared to have the tissues. Books and Jams asked, what's one way your reading has changed since joining BookTube and one way that it hasn't? I think one of the biggest ways my reading has changed is honestly I'm just reading a lot more now over the last 1.5 years than I was when I initially started BookTube. I think I've sort of gotten back to the pace I used to read at when I was younger, but in the first couple of years post-college and shifting into an adulting type world, it just, reading sort of fell to the wayside, and so that is one thing about my reading that has changed. And I think there was a period of time where I was reading a lot more YA, a lot more fantasy, a lot of those kinds of books that everyone else on BookTube reads that are not necessarily my favorites, but I have since shifted back to that. So one way it now hasn't changed is that I still just read now the things that I want to read, and I don't really pay that much attention necessarily to what other people are reading. I do still try to keep up with what's new and what's popular because I do enjoy reading contemporary stuff and having books to talk about with other people, but at the end of the day, my reading is done for me. It's not done for other people, and so if I'm reading stuff that I don't enjoy just because other people are reading it, that completely defeats the purpose. The next 2 questions come from Avocada, who asked, what is your most favorite and least favorite genre, and is there a genre that you never pick books from? I'm really bad at picking favorites, so my top 3 favorite genres, I've already mentioned them, are literary fiction, historical fiction, and mystery thrillers, although I think if I had to choose, I'd probably go with historical fiction. That tends to be the genre where most of my favorites come from, and that has been my favorite genre, like one of my favorite genres for like my whole life. I have always loved historical fiction, particularly like World War II, Civil War, war era type books. My least favorite genre, and also the genre that I just never ever pick books from, is erotica, and that is not because I think it's like, a terrible genre or anything. It's just I choose not to read books about that general topic. It's not a personal preference of mine. That's not something that I want to read in literature, and so I don't ever pick up books from that genre and don't ever want to read them. And the final question for the day comes from Trisha McCullough, which is, what is your favorite classic of all? And I always have a hard time with this. It's kind of a tie because I can never totally decide, but it is sort of back and forth between Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion by Jane Austen. I love them both. Whenever I read P&P, I think this is my favorite, and then I read Persuasion and I think this one's my favorite. I just love them both. They're very different. They're both wonderful, but I love them both. They're like top books of all time, not just top classics, because they're both just fantastic. Alright friends, so those are all of the questions and answers. Again, if I didn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure it gets answered in the comments below. Now it's time for the giveaway. I have numbered all of you guys that asked questions. I've got a random number generator, so I'm gonna click the random number real quick, and the winner of the giveaway is Megan Ryan. Congratulations! I'm so excited. Please send an email to sarah@sarahanhayes.com. We'll connect. I'll ask you a couple questions about your genre preferences and stuff and get you hooked up with a book that I have absolutely loved that I think you would love as well. Thank you again so much for subscribing, for watching, all of those wonderful things. You guys really are the best and really are the reason I continue to do this. If you want to follow me elsewhere online, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads, all at Sarah Ann Hayes. The links for those profiles will be in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!